What has happened is in the last 2 years, India's growth rate has actually declined. So it was growing at about 8% plus until the fiscal year of about 2011-12. But in the last fiscal year, growth rate has now declined. 12-13 was about 5%, and in the latest quarters of the year 13-14, which has just begun, also growth rate looks like it's not going to go beyond 5%. What has happened? Well, India still needs to do a lot more reforms if growth is to be sustained. Poverty has to be brought down rapidly. To continue that process. Further reforms in the factor markets are required, particularly labor and land. Whereas the product markets got liberalized, they got reformed pretty much, including through foreign trade. Factor markets still have remained highly distorted in India, and that is particularly true of labor markets. India has a huge panoply of labor laws. About in all together, when you add up the labor laws enacted by the central government and those enacted by the state government, it's practically about 200 labor laws. Is far too many for the firms to actually work with. A lot of these need to be rationalized. A lot of liberalization has to happen. One of the most kind of pernicious restrictions that labor laws impose on the firms is that the Industrial Disputes Act has a provision according to which if a manufacturing firm has 100 workers or more, it is nearly impossible for it to actually lay off the workers. That is what that means, of course, is that even if the firm goes bankrupt, it still has to pay the workforce, continue to pay the workforce through its profits in the other sectors, other operations. So that kind of a situation really discourages entry of firms. Firms, when they feel that they can never exit out, they are very reluctant to enter. And that kind of partially accounts for why the manufacturing has not done so well in India, and particularly the labor-intensive manufacturing. Because for the capital-intensive one, it's not a big problem. Labor costs are 7 or 8% or 10% at the most, and so you can work out your arrangements with workers. Even if you want to lay off, you can reach an agreement by giving golden parachutes, golden handshakes. Labor-intensive industries don't have that solution available because 80% or 90% of the costs are labor costs, so you can't really give those kinds of handshakes. So that is restrictive, that discourages entry. India will have to deal with that, change those laws. Likewise, land acquisition laws are very antiquated. The specific law that currently rules is from about 1890s under the British. It is waiting to be reformed as well. Then the government has to do its bit. Infrastructure needs to. A lot of infrastructure got built in the 2000s, particularly starting late 1990s. But now India's needs have gone up. Demand for infrastructure is there. There's a sort of shortage, if you will. Infrastructure has to respond, and that's where the government actually has to do its bit. And then there are reforms in, of course, higher education sector as well that are waiting to happen. So those are the kinds of things India will need to do in the next 5 to 6 years to come. I'm generally very optimistic that this growth rate will shift back to about 8 or 9% in another year's time. My calculations really are that India would grow at least in dollar terms. In dollar terms, it has grown in the last 10 years about 11-12% in real terms. And even if it grows at 10% per year for the next 15 years, it will become $7 to $8 trillion economy from what it is currently about 1.8 trillion. And that, of course, will make India the third largest economy in the world, probably ahead of Japan and behind the United States and China.